guys, it's Meela and welcome back to my channel where I like to talk about food, fitness, and life in New York City. Hopping right into it, if you don't follow me on Instagram, you might not know this, but I actually lost 85 pounds naturally, the good old-fashioned way with diet and exercise. And I wanted to get on here and share my story, but also share the 3 things that I did differently this time around that helped me actually hit my weight loss goals, as opposed to the many times before where I had tried and tried and tried and failed. So I'm gonna share those 3 things with you in this video. Gotcha. So ever since I can remember, I've always been a little bit overweight. I was a super skinny kid until about 7th grade. And that's when I first started to notice that I was a little bit bigger than the other girls in my class. You know, as normal, I played team sports. I ran around at recess. I ate a pretty healthy diet of home-cooked dinners and school lunches. And really, I think my being overweight was a combination of 2 things. So 1, genetics. And then on top of that, you know, I was never really educated about nutrition. We ate fairly healthy, but I didn't understand the principles of nutrition or the fact that my genetics might, you know, make me have to work a little bit harder, watch what I eat more so than other kids. Then from about 10th grade to sophomore year of college, I weighed, you know, the same. I was 5'7". I was usually around 170 pounds, which puts me like smack dab in the middle of the overweight BMI category. And I wasn't big at all. I see that now, especially in hindsight. But my weight was always something that was top of mind for me. You know, there were dresses that I wanted to wear that I felt like I couldn't because of my body, or girls in my class who went to pool parties in bikinis when I felt like I couldn't because of my body. Everyone in my extended family, you know, had issues with their weight. It was just something I always thought about. Then at the beginning of junior year of college, I got in a long-term relationship. We moved in with one another right away. We were together for about 3, almost 4 years. And this person struggled with depression, as well as had a very toxic relationship with food. It was a combination of school being really difficult and hobbies that created a sedentary lifestyle and, you know, really bad food choices. We ended up both gaining a ton of weight together. Hi, it's me from the future. I am already in my pajamas and I was just watching this footage back, but I was thinking it might be really interesting to also go into detail about how I gained 50 pounds in this relationship. It was a lot of work. It was not easy. So if you are interested in that and want it to be a story time, let me know in the comments and I'll try to make it happen. Okay, bye. So in January of 2014, I weighed in at my, you know, ultimate highest weight of 220 pounds. I looked at the last couple of years, you know, my pictures from graduation and formals, and I just had no idea how I had gotten there, and I was so disappointed. The day that I weighed in at that number is the day that I ended my relationship. I didn't set a weight loss goal at first. I just decided, you know, I gotta do something big, so I signed up for my first half marathon. Which was a challenge. You know, I basically hadn't worked out or exercised in 2.5, 3 years, and I was signing up to run 13.1 miles, but it was, you know, the kick in the butt I really needed. So while I trained for that race, I also started studying nutrition. I signed up for a course while I was still in school, and I also, you know, bought a couple textbooks and just started reading about it to learn kind of the principles of everything. So jumping forward a year, I ran my half marathon and I weighed in at around 170 pounds. So back to my pre-relationship weight. I had lost 50 pounds in a year, and I mostly did that just by counting calories and moving more. That also happened to be the year that I met my now husband. A year and a half later, I got engaged, and from January 2017 to July 2017, I went from 170 pounds to 135 pounds. So I lost another 35 pounds in those 6 months gearing up to my wedding. This was a big deal. I hadn't been under 170 since like 7th grade. I really wanted to look good in my wedding photos, and so many times before there had been a major life event or a school dance or a birthday, and I had said, you know, I'm gonna lose the weight, I'm gonna be, you know, X many pounds down by the time this date rolls around, and I never did it. So I knew my wedding had to be it. If I was gonna finally lose the weight, it was gonna be for my wedding. I love matcha. Okay, so that was my story. Now it's time for my tips. You know, I've watched a ton of videos like this, and I don't wanna just tell you the same things you probably already heard before. You know, obviously to lose weight, I counted my calories, I ate at a caloric deficit, I moved my body more, I drank a ton of water, I got a lot of sleep. I worked out, you know, almost every day, whether it was a big intense thing like a spin class or a boxing class, or something, you know, mild like a walk or 20 minutes on the elliptical. Like, yes, you know the formula, most likely, if you watched a video like this before. Instead, I wanna focus on 3 things that I did outside of eating less and moving more that made a big difference this time around and actually helped me hit my goals, whereas so many times before I had failed. So the 3 things I did differently this time around. The first one, I studied. I'm sure that sounds really weird, but when I said before, I made health and fitness my biggest hobby, I truly mean that. I knew that if I wanted to make progress, I had to understand what was happening. So I signed up for a course in school, I bought textbooks and read them, I followed influencers and trainers and bought their ebooks and read their cookbooks and Reddit threads, and I just tried to figure out what all of these things had in common. You know, the reality is there is no template for how to lose weight. For everyone, it's gonna be different. You know, your neighbor could be on a keto diet and your favorite blogger could be, you know, promoting a vegan lifestyle, and great, whatever works for them, works for them. I knew that in order to figure out what would work for me, I had to learn about it all. So I studied and I started learning about the complicated stuff like macronutrients and digestive health, and kind of figured out what worked for me. I'm almost hesitant to tell you what worked for me because I truly believe that we all need to find something that works, you know, for us on an individual level, but I will share, you know, I definitely counted my calories. That was really important. I paid a bit more attention to my macros and tried to increase my protein intake. In general, I tried to cook at home as often as I could. I just, you know, was hesitant to dine out where you don't really know if your food's cooked with a lot of butter or a lot of oil, and I wanted to have a bit more control. I also tried to avoid, when possible, things that came wrapped in plastic so that I would be, you know, making cleaner food choices by following that general rule of thumb. So the second thing I did this time around differently was I tracked. And I mean everything. So I tracked my calories, of course, but I also paid more attention to my protein intake. I took progress pictures because I didn't trust the scale every day and I wanted to see progress over time. I logged my workouts. I knew how many steps I took on a given day. And probably most importantly for me, but this one's very, very subjective, I did weigh myself every day. It definitely helped because it tied into that first point of wanting to understand things. So I would be able to see on the scale how certain foods or even certain workouts impacted my weight on a day-to-day basis. And what it did was it made me actually feel more confident in myself. You know, if I ran a half marathon and weighed in the next day 2 pounds heavier, I was like, okay, this has happened to me before. I have the data to support it. I'm retaining water because I just, you know, did really intense exercise. I was able to just kind of figure things out, piece things together. The third thing that I did differently this time around that helped me actually hit my weight loss goals, I stayed as consistent as I possibly could. Now I know this is probably the one that you don't want to hear. But it's an ugly truth. I had a lot of bad habits that I needed to learn about and learn how to break. Because I was tracking everything, I started to notice, you know, there were certain times in the day where I would give into cravings, or there were certain social situations where it became really, really hard for me to stick to my goals. Once I figured out what those bad habits were, it helped me stay super consistent. You know, every other diet I had ever attempted, I would go through cycles of 10 perfect days of diet and exercise, and then 5 days where I was like off the rails, and 3 days of good behavior and 3 days of bad behavior, and it just made me stand still. Another thing to mention here is that when you do mess up, the quicker you can get back to your routine, the better. And quite transparently, this is something I'm still working on. I tend to be, you know, a bit of an all or nothing person. So, you know, I have a bad breakfast and I think, well, the whole day is ruined. I might as well not go to the gym. But the reality is like, if you can make that a bad moment in time, a bad meal, as opposed to a bad day or a bad week or a bad month, like, you're gonna hit your goals. The goal is just to get back to your routine as soon as you possibly can. Okay, everyone, I told my story, I gave you my tips. The sun is setting, which means it's time to end the video. If you liked it, please give it a big thumbs up and consider subscribing. I'm new on YouTube, but I would absolutely love to have you. If you have any questions or any things you wanna see from me in the future, feel free to leave them in the comment. And until next time, bye.